In my freshman year in college in a literature class where a professor said one of the most important things in picking up any article or book is to read the first few sentences or chapters and you'll get a picture of what the author is trying to say. Genesis is like that. There is so much more there than a casual reading gives us. We get the whole issue of creation, and then we, today, get the aftermath of eating the apple. We're going to talk about that. When God asks the questions. Questions are more than a teacher's tool for testing the student's grasp of knowledge. Questions can open up a vast world of communication. They can lead to other questions, and they can lead to a deeper understanding and more questions. A writer I heard on one of the news channels a number of months ago said that his mother always said to him when he got home, not what did you learn today, but what questions did you ask today? And he credited his mother with his understanding of how to think creatively and how to move beyond even the textbook that you were studying. A door gets opened and then we understand so much more. A good question will open up conversation. It will reveal much even about the ones asking the questions and the ones listening to the questions. Ask a grandparent about their grandchild. But you don't do that if you've only got a few moments, because it's going to take a while. How many of you have special grandchildren? Aren't they all special? Aren't they all special? They're all brighter than everybody else's. They're all more athletic. They're more understanding. They're more creative. Our perspective gets in the way, perhaps, of some things, but one thing that is very true, that in a question about our grandchildren, you will get a wealth of information. If the child has only been born the last few days, you'll learn something about length and height and weight and all that goes with it, and how quickly they roll over, which is quicker than most children, how quickly they'll crawl, and how quickly they'll take those first steps. And when they get just a little bit older, you'll get an understanding that this child is really special. They have the ability to understand, to walk, to do about anything, and you move on a little further, and they're excelling academically, and they're on the soccer team, and they're on Little League, and all that goes with it. And as the years pass, the stories just get larger and larger, but they are really true. There is so much that is going on when you're talking about someone's grandchild. And I'm going to try to continue in the sermon without referring to the best grandchild the whole world has, the only one that we have, but we'll leave it at that. When you ask a grandparent about their child, you're not only getting information, you are saying that you care. And that grandparent, in responding, is letting you know how important that child is in their lives, and how much they care for them, and how much they incorporate them into the life. But you're also saying something to the grandparents. You're saying, I care enough to ask about your grandchild. And you have opened up a whole door of communication in that way. There is power in questions, not just to give factual information, but to give us a sense of being and a sense of relationships that are important to us. Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple Computer, had been trying for years to recruit his friend John Scully to come to work for Apple. Scully was a senior executive at Pepsi-Cola, and every time Jobs would broach the subject, Scully had an excuse. Time isn't right, it isn't right for the family, it isn't, I'm in a big project, and on and on and on. They were good friends, but it was beginning to wear the friendship a little bit raw. And then came the night in New York City when the two men were on a balcony of a condo overlooking Central Park. The sun was going down and Jobs said, "I'm going to try my pitch one more time." And he had the usual lack of success. But he wasn't one to quit, and he got to the place where he was exasperated, and he fired a laser-like question. "John, do you want to spend the rest of your life selling sugar water, or do you want a chance to change the world?" John didn't respond. Jobs didn't know the impact of that question. But Scully recounted his feelings. "It was as if someone had come up to me and delivered a stiff blow to my stomach. The question was one that just took control of me, one for which I did not have an answer for. It simply knocked the wind out of me." And it wasn't long after that that he was named president of Apple Computers. Questions can do that. Thomas Friedman, in I believe his latest book, Thank You for Being Late, says that in the 21st century, knowing all the answers won't distinguish you from other executives or others in your field. Rather, the ability to ask questions is what will distinguish you. It can be the mark of true genius. Have you been around people like that who just seem to know the time and the placement of asking a question which causes everyone to look in a different way than they have been before? I remember the question that Professor Emerson asked me in my sophomore, maybe my junior year in college. A little background. I was going to Marion College, which later became Indiana Wesleyan University. They had just adopted a sports program a couple years before. I played shortstop on the baseball team, and I seemed to put more energy into that than the academic world. She had reminded me that my parents were there at the school, and my dad was a trustee of the school, and they were very good students. And she said that in a way that, well, it got to the truth that academic things were not at the top of my list at that time in my life. But she was one who valued education to the nth degree. I had come to her armed with a document that was written by the athletic director and signed by the athletic director and the baseball coach. And it said, "Please excuse Steve Buck from the following classes because of baseball games that are scheduled at that time." She looked at the paper. She set it down. She uncomfortably did not respond for what seemed like a half an hour, but it was probably 10 seconds. And then she said, "I am a tenured professor here. I have been in this college for almost 40 years. I'm not much of a sports person. And I want you to know, Mr. Buck, that this letter doesn't mean much to me." I knew something was coming after that. And she said in firm words, "You know the rules in my class. One unexcused absence. The second one, your grade goes down half a point. The third, another half a point. And the fourth, another half point. And yours could go down far enough that you won't even pass the class." Wow. And then she said, "Mr. Buck, you're going to have to decide whether you are in college to get an education or play baseball." I didn't take that real well. But that was one of those questions that hit me in the gut. Now, if you'd seen me play baseball, you'd have known that there was no future in baseball for me. I mean, I had fun at it, but I was never going to get paid for it. But you have to decide what you're going to do. Questions can motivate. And I'll say that question, it took me a couple years and in graduate school before I really got serious. But I go back to that question. Questions can motivate. Questions can drive us deeper into issues of life and faith. Questions can gain power depending on the questioner. As a teenager, if you ask your friend, "What went on at the party Friday night?" you'll probably get one answer. If your parents ask you, "What happened at the party Friday night?" you may get a little different answer. The one that is asking the question can demand a little more than the other. I've got a series of sermons of which I'm not going to preach all of them this morning, but on questions God asked. Cain, where's your brother? Jesus had the GPS, knew where the brother, or God had the GPS, he knew where the brother was buried. But that was a question that delved deeper than just family relationships. How do we relate to others of God's creation, and how do we respond? Job asked the question, or had the question asked to him, where were you, Job, when I hung the stars in place? Humanity, we have a sense a lot of times that we have things figured out, that we're the ones that everything is all about, and that we're number one. And God in that question reminded us of our limitations in His grace in His creation. The final question to Paul, God said, why do you kick against the stone? Paul was having that powerful Damascus Road experience. And then he was asked, why are you fighting me? Why are you fighting? Questions from God take on a whole new setting of powerful issues of faith. You know the setting in the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve are there. They are in the garden. The serpent had convinced them, the woman to eat, and then the woman had convinced the man to eat, but you couldn't get out of responsibility from that. They ate. Now God comes for His normal walk in the garden with them. They have hidden themselves. God calls out, Adam, where are you? Eve, where are you? Where are you? They are in the garden. Where are you? God knew. When they finally came out, they wrapped themselves in fig leaves, knowing they had done something wrong. And God continues, why have you eaten the fruit of the forbidden tree? Now Adam tries to get off by blaming Eve, and Eve tries to blame the serpent, and God sees through it, and they are busted. How did they think they could get away with it? But back to the question, where are you? That is a powerful question. That's a question that can detail most anything. A simple question. Where are you financially in your life? Studies show that no matter how large or small the bank account is, about 95% of us think it isn't big enough. Where are you financially? Where are you relationally? It's very easy, even in a time of COVID shutdown and all that, to get so wrapped up in what we are doing that we run in a circle faster and faster and faster, but we're getting nowhere. And those that are closest to us are feeling the pain of our absence. Where are we relationally? With our children, our spouses, our parents, our friends. What a tragedy. What a tragedy when they are taking second place. Where are you emotionally? Is your fuse a little short? Oh, maybe I'm the only one that has one of those some of the time. I doubt it. Where are we emotionally? How do we respond? Where are you spiritually? The genius, I believe, of John Wesley was not his powerful preaching. Or if you've read many of his sermons, they are complicated and dull. But how did God use that to set the world on fire for Christ? I sense one of the things, first of all, God's Spirit works in ways that we don't understand. But I would suggest that one of the things that made the biggest difference was the class meetings. 12 people meeting together once a week. And the first question that they began with, and I've got a feeling the only question they dealt with on many, many, many nights, was, how is it with your soul? And if you read some of those responses, someone would sit there, and I'm sure they had their hand up and they were just waiting. I had the greatest week you can imagine. I've seen God working in the life of my children. I'm just, everything is great, and on and on and on. And then you've got somebody sitting there with their head down and saying, oh, wow, I had an awful week. You know, in the mine, I work under so-and-so, and people groan. He was the worst of the supervisors. And he had heard that I had this religious experience, and he taunted me. And you know, I've got a little Irish blood in me. And I responded. By the grace of God, I didn't hit him, but I came as close as I could. I didn't really swear at him, but I used enough words that he understood what I was saying. And my heart has a hole in it for how I responded. I went back to him the next day and said, will you forgive me? I did not act like the Christian I proclaimed to be. How is it with your soul? Are we so caught up in what we're doing that the issue of how it is with our soul is pushed off to the side? The question, where are you, can be disconcerting and even frightening. But it is a question rightly asked. It is a question that we need to share not only with the deepest recesses of our heart, but with some that are close enough to help us in understanding. For if we don't, we will just run faster and faster in a circle, and we will get nowhere. It is a question that needs to be pondered. Where are you? But I sense that is not the most important lesson from this scripture. Back to the setting. God created Adam and Eve, placed them in the garden. Everything was going according to plan. You don't eat of the tree that's got the fence around it. And they disobeyed the only restriction placed on them. Climbed the fence, they ate the apple. Who would have blamed God if God would have wiped the slate clean and said, we're going to start all over with somebody else that appreciates what I've done for them. Let's end it all with fire and brimstone or something like that. But what was God's response? He went into the garden, not breathing fire, looking for them, for he knew the GPS of where they were. He was searching for them. Searching for them to come back to the fold. Oh, there were consequences. But isn't that the reality of the God that we follow? Even when we stray from the path, God is calling us back. C.S. Lewis, that phenomenal British writer and Christian who came to faith in midlife, who was already a renowned writer and scholar in England. And he speaks of his conversion in the following words. When God had closed in on me. I think sometimes we forget the reality that the God that we worship is calling us back. When he says, where are you? Where are you, Adam and Eve? He's caring enough to go looking. That is the God that we serve. To God be the glory.